Welcome to Mintel's Little Conversation podcast.
Welcome to Mintel's Little Conversation, where our experts bring you fresh ideas and new perspectives on how consumers eat, drink, shop, groom and think. I'm Andrew Davidson, SVP and Chief Insights Officer for Mintel Comperemedia, based in New York. And on today's podcast, we're talking about how to engage consumers with digital marketing. Did you know that the first internet banner ad reportedly ran 25 years ago? Telco giant AT&T ran a banner ad on the website Hotwired back in 1994. Don't go and Google Hotwired, it doesn't exist anymore. And according to The Atlantic magazine, about 44% of those who saw the ad actually went ahead and clicked on the ad. So those are engagement rates that marketers can really only dream of today. So here to discuss the state of all things digital, we have our experts, Laura Ziemer and Buddy Lowe in Chicago, and Rebecca McGrath in London. Welcome to the pod.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, great to have you. And now, before we get started, let's please, if you could just please introduce yourselves, give us a little bit about your background, your journey, not your journey into work today, but your name, your title, how long you've been at Mintel, how long you've been tracking your industry.
Hi, my name is Laura Ziemer. I'm the Director of Digital Insights for Comperemedia Omni, and I've been working in digital advertising and brand strategy for the last 10 years.
My name is Buddy Lowe. I'm the Senior Technology and Consumer Electronics Analyst here at Mintel. I've been at Mintel now for around 3.5 years, actually.
Hi, I'm Rebecca McGrath. I'm Mintel's Senior Media Analyst, and I've been at Mintel for around 6 years now, focused entirely on media.
Excellent. So we've got a great roster to talk about everything digital. So let's start by setting the stage before we get into engagement with digital marketing. So where are we when it comes to digital advertising in 2019? Buddy, could you give us the state of digital, not quite the state of the union, but the state of digital for digital advertising?
Yeah, for the U.S., it's a huge market already. Mintel has a market size for digital advertising at $125 billion. And we have a forecast that, at the high end of things could double that at $252 billion by 2024. Within our middle of the range forecast, we have growth to about $200 billion, which is still extremely aggressive growth within the category. And, we know that marketers have to go to where people are, and everyone's activity is increasingly digital. And so we forecast just continued growth and strength in there. And that growth will be driven primarily through paid search, but also digital video as well. We forecast digital video to have significant growth within the next 5 years.
So it's huge and it's growing.
Mm-hmm.
And so what are some of the key milestones that got us to where we are today?
I would definitely say paid search is one of the biggest drivers of the digital advertising space. Giants like Google that have monetized their digital platforms, their search engines, really bringing consumers the information they want, and bringing advertisers and brands, connecting advertisers and brands to the consumers searching for the products and services they're looking for. And that's been a huge driver in growth in digital ad spend.
And I would point to the other one key sort of areas is mobile advertising. And in the UK, actually, for the first time, mobile digital advertising overtook, represented over half of the market. Mm-hmm. So it just shows everything is obviously now being geared towards the smartphone.
That's definitely huge. And I think, something that we're starting to really take into account for our clients is cross-device behavior. So you're on your mobile phone while you're watching TV, you're on your phone while you're shopping online. So how are you even using multiple devices at the same time and potentially being exposed to multiple ads in multiple digital channels at the same time?
So I'm glad none of you didn't mention the pop-up ad, my favourite. He says sarcastically, or Pokemon Go. That was another big milestone. So we talk about multi-device, mobile, and paid search. Like obviously 3 major milestones on this journey towards this huge digital advertising industry. So it's obviously changed a lot, many different developments along the way. I mean, sort of laugh and joke about things like pop-up ads and banner ads, but of course, back in the day, they were like true innovations. Mm-hmm. And we continue to see that innovation in this industry. So let's now talk about engagement then. So what are the issues facing advertisers when it comes to engagement?
It's such a challenging landscape right now, and it can be very overwhelming. So there's a couple of big things that are really top of mind for marketers. So a big one is creative blindness. So we talked about AT&T really standing out 25 years ago with this banner ad. Ads are everywhere now. You have the display ads, pre-roll video, paid search, social media, and there's just this general awareness and constant exposure. So it's sometimes consumers aren't even processing the creative that they're seeing in this channel. And I think previously when advertisers consider how they're measuring these channels, everything was about click-through. Are they clicking through to the site to buy, to apply for something? And what's happening now is Google has introduced this concept of multi-touch attribution, where you're really considering how does exposure to this ad drive a consumer's decision or engagement. So you see consumers just being so much more selective and critical about the type of ads that they want to engage with.
Yeah, I would supporting that. Our market research shows that 40% of consumers among the surveyed options that we surveyed use two or more methods to avoid ads actively online. So there's kind of a cat and mouse game going on right now between advertisers and consumers, especially power users within the digital space. Those who are most active in the digital space are the most active kind of avoiders in the market.
Yeah, and of course, sort of in Europe right now, one of the big issues facing advertisers is GDPR, which is, for those that don't know, is sort of a regulation about taking sort of giving consumers more control over their data. Now, obviously, we've seen how data is being used by advertisers sort of in a fairly free-for-all way so far, and now we're going to see a sort of, I think, a lot more regulatory pressure across the world and consumer sort of savvy awareness of how their data is being used to track them. And that's going to have to lead to sort of advertisers looking at sort of slightly more different methods of getting their adverts to the right consumers.
So let's go back to Buddy then. So what are consumers actually really doing then to avoid these?
Well, we see actually a third of consumers are using ad avoiding ad blocking software, and what we actually saw is that there's not as big of a dramatic shift in terms of age among consumers who are using ad blocking software. You'd think younger consumers, more tech savvy consumers would be the most biggest users of it, but there isn't that big of a discrepancy. Other things that we're seeing are your standard, deleting cookies, basically removing the type of trackable information that consumer or brands and advertisers can collect on themselves, and they're really going out of their way to block advertisers from getting that info.
So a third of consumers. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a big problem for the industry. In fact, I just saw an article recently about a new software coming out that may block ads on audio streaming sites and services, which will also put a dent in services like Spotify or SoundCloud or general podcasts or things like that.
I think it just shows consumers really are they've become very savvy about this now. They are aware of. So it just means you really do have to earn their attention. Like I said, so you can't just demand it now. People will find a way to get around that. And so that's as we're saying, it's about how does an advertiser respond and actually get people to sort of voluntarily, to some extent, watch advertising or engage with advertising.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great point, because from everything I've seen, there is a willingness to, if you're confronted with a choice to pay for something or have some ads and get something for free, there's consumers, from what I've seen, the research I've seen, seem to be willing to consume the ads if they rather than pay anything. But they're clearly really trying to actively avoid them. But is that even really possible given what you're saying with so many different touch points? Can they really avoid them? Is it really possible?
That's a good question. So I think it comes down to, you have the consumers, as Buddy said, who are using 2, 3, 4, ad blocking mechanisms. They're clearing their cookies on a regular basis. But what I think the key takeaway is for marketers is they're telling you these ads aren't relevant for them. That should be a call to action to change what you're doing and make things more relevant for what you're trying to do in that channel. So if you're trying to engage people, thankfully we're not as much in the age of pop-ups anymore, but, think about what would truly engage that person. How do you add personalization? How do you make it relevant to them? How do you give them a hand in controlling their ad experience so they, not only want to see that ad, but look forward to it in a sense because they know that they're going to get something from it.
And it feels like the issue of relevance has been something that's been around. Consumers keep saying it, and advertising continues to get better. But maybe the bar is rising along the way, and that consumers are just their expectations for engagement are rising along the way.
Yeah,
go?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, ironically, I think if consumers were more willing to share their personal information and the things they were interested in, they'd be served more relevant ads, and it'd actually be easier for brands and advertisers to connect with their audience and connect and provide content that they'd actually want and would engage with.
Mm-hmm.
Our data shows that among consumers that said that they saw an ad within the past 7 days, 44% said that they had zero interest in that ad. So it's a problem within the industry for sure.
He's hitting us with the stats there. It's good stuff.
Going off that, everybody, our research has just sort of shown actually a pretty sort of high willingness to engage with advertisers if given the option to sort of select topics or sort of give input, ban adverts you don't want, and sort of tell advertisers what you do want to be shown, because you're aware you're going to be shown ads at some point. So you have an incentive to want it to be relevant for you. And I think we kind of think of consumers as fairly passive sometimes in this case, but I think they're far more active or willing to be active in this area than we give them credit for.
I couldn't agree more. And that's one of the big things that we're going to be tracking going into this year, and something that we expect to see more of, especially with digital marketing. There are, many ways now where either the platform itself allows the consumers to control their experience. So something like Hulu, where it says, which ad experience would you like to enjoy while you're watching your program? Or I know that Buddy and I have talked a lot about younger consumers really being okay with giving up some of their personal and privacy information if they get something back in return. So zero party data, where the consumer is, volunteering or giving something away because what they get back is so much more relevant to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have, not to hammer on the data some more, but in our upcoming Attitudes Towards Technology report, 43% of consumers agree it's worth it to share their location for discounts on nearby stores and restaurants. And 35% say it's worth it to exchange their personal information for products tailored for them.
Was that a plug, Buddy?
Might have been.
So it's interesting though, so it ties back. So if it's all about control and consumers want it being in control of what they're seeing, and then they feel that that's more relevant, and then they would engage with those ads, does that get sort of then in compliance with the GDPR part, Rebecca?
Yeah,
so there's kind of like a win-win.
It's certainly, they do merge together as being sort of the future having to be much more about consent and control for consumers. So we're all aware of this sort of agreement we're in with advertisers, but what we don't want to do is be taken advantage of or to have things done against our will. So if we're involved in that journey with advertisers about telling us what we might enjoy, what we want to buy, then it doesn't have to be about sort of quite so covert manipulation of taking our data and tracking us when we're not aware, and then you can have a much more favorable feeling towards advertising. So it's about sort of giving, I guess, consumers a little bit more say on the whole thing, and then they'll feel more comfortable to give up data when they're in agreement to do it.
I'm sure it's about enjoyment too, right? I think, right? It's like, or entertainment. I mean, we had, I was reading yesterday, actually in Adweek, there was an article by the CEO of Giphy, and was talking about branded gifts and saying how, and there was a good quote. It was something along the lines of, consumers, don't have a lot of patience for advertising, but they have, as much time in the world when it comes to entertainment and enjoyment, and that's where the whole sort of the Giphy part comes in. I was amazed at something like 500 million gifs are exchanged every day. There's another stat back at you there, buddy. 500 million gifs exchanged every day. So that whole aspect of enjoyment and entertainment, right?
I think it's been our data showing really interesting that younger consumers are definitely more willing to say that they found a video advert entertaining enough not to skip, or that they are happy with sort of influencers advertising products and having sponsored ads if they find these things entertaining. If you work hard and make something that has genuine entertainment value to it, people will. Obviously they'll be much more receptive. That's always been the case. But I think what's interesting there is that does suggest that those kind of adverts are being tailored towards younger demographics to be entertaining. And it's about, you've got to make sure you're making them entertaining for older audiences as well, rather than just being like, get the younger viewers in, as advertisers are so likely to do.
Anything else that brands can do?
I would say on top of that, you can have ads that are entertaining, but I think especially within digital video, you need a wide variance of spots that you can serve to your audience. Our data also shows that consumers are annoyed by repeating ads on digital video services like Hulu and YouTube and things like that. So if you are going to participate in digital video advertising, which I say you should also have a varied, lots of different spots so that you're not, hammering the same commercial over and over again to your consumers, which could potentially turn them off.
Yeah, and I think, to build on both what Rebecca and Buddy said, I think it comes down to, we talked about consumers are very conscious that they're being served ads and entertainment seems to work. But I think then what that means really across channels is it has to feel organic. We want consumers to feel like they're involved in and participating in this discourse. So, if it's a streaming service, understanding that someone's sitting there watching 6 episodes in a row and they don't want to see your commercial 50 times, think about how you can build that and actually have them look forward to the commercial breaks because they're going to see something new. Or on social media, finding a way, Andrew, whether it's with gifts or, with a brand personality, to put the consumer in the driver's seat and help drive some of that discourse on social channels, or with ephemeral marketing on Instagram, where it feels just very, very organic.
It's fascinating, and I think so. Let's pivot a little bit then, and let's say, so we've explored these issues of engagement, and it's tougher now than ever before. But there are definitely some ways that there's some roadmaps to getting there. What about 2020? So, what are the things to watch for as we're now coming into the next, over the next sort of 12 to 18 months?
It's a great question. So one of the biggest things that we've talked about is you will start to see brands have a discrete streaming strategy. So understanding, as we just talked about, that when consumers are consuming content on whether it's streaming audio or video, that they engage with that content differently than they do radio or linear TV. So how do you think about building a strategy for that the same way that you would in social media? I think, from some of our reporting we talked about ad blockers, but we know that only 1 in 10 consumers is willing to pay more for that ad-free experience. So how do you take advantage of that and say, okay, the consumer is willing to see ads on this platform. What can I really do? So that's definitely a big thing to look out for this year.
I would also point to voice and search being such an important trend going forward, and that utterly changed the game for how advertisers are reaching people. And obviously, versus a screen search on voice is, how many options you're going to hear, how do you get to the top of those mentions, are people willing to hear adverts, and just in general engaging audio adverts and how do you create them in a way that people will maybe even voluntarily engage with them or listen to them. So that voice search is something that advertisers are going to have to contend with.
Yeah.
And just to build on that, I'm very interested to see how the implications of voice search on paid search advertising, because those are going to be two very different. If consumers transition more towards using voice assistants for searching for things, paid search is the largest segment in digital advertising today. So the implications in that, in terms of revenue, could be pretty dramatic.
Mm.
And as it relates to search, so I know this is a digital podcast, don't hate me for pulling it back into the real world, but we think that what'll be interesting also is looking at the inverse. So there's so much data and so much knowledge now of engagement and things that work that I think we're going to see a lot of digital first or e-commerce brands using that data to inform their brick and mortar presence. So a great example is someone like Warby Parker that took all of their, digital engagement, consumption data and purchase data to inform where they would place their stores. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. And then also seeing the storefront really supporting and being linked with that top of funnel experience with search. So consumers, doing that cross-device behavior where they're on their phone in a store, they're using the store for research before they go and ultimately purchase online.
Interesting. So, do you have a favorite digital ad campaign that's running at the moment that might encapsulate kind of what we're talking about today? Warby Parker, you mentioned. Anyone got any others?
I would say I'm a big fan of the recent pause advertising that Hulu's put into their platform, which is basically just a very unobtrusive advertisement that only shows up after you paused a program. And so Charmin was one of the first advertisers within this within this program. Usually, and there's a lot of synergy there. You think, I gotta go to the bathroom, I'm gonna pause it. It doesn't show up right away, and then you come back to your screen and there's a nice Charmin ad waiting for you, and it goes away when you click play. And so it's unobtrusive, and it makes sense, I think, and it's win-win for advertisers and the consumers.
One I was thinking of, based on what Laura was talking about earlier, was the Greg's sort of advertising campaign, social media sort of advertising work. If I don't know if American audiences will know of Greg's, but
tell us what Greg's is. Actually, before you do that, buddy, for our global audience, tell us what Charmin is.
Oh, it's toilet paper manufacturer.
What an interesting pick for the podcast. All right, and so tell us about Greg's.
So Greg's is a very popular UK bakery, and they released the vegan sausage roll, and that created a lot of controversy on social media, slightly sort of started by some pundits, UK pundits, and they responded just brilliantly in terms of getting into that sort of slight culture war area, just to make sure you were trending, make sure you were everywhere, making sure now people are attaching sort of a sort of cultural value to the vegan sausage roll, and it's been sensationally successful. It's about, as Laura was saying, about getting organically in that conversation and having fun with it as well on social media.
I also really loved Hotels.com, Romance Isn't Dead. So they had the full omni-channel mix, but then I really enjoyed what they did on Hulu because they considered every type of ad viewing experience that you could have on that platform. So they were staggering to show different creative during the breaks, but they also partnered with a new program that came out, a mini series for weddings and a funeral, and they actually integrated Hotels.com into the show where they sponsored one of the weddings. Captain Obvious was the spokesperson for Hotels.com, was the DJ. They mentioned Hotels.com in their vows, and then they tied that to a real social media campaign where if any couples wanted to mention Hotels.com in their vows, they would pay for your honeymoon. So just really considering, hey, we're going to hit the people who have the ad-free experience. We're going to make the ad viewing experience for people who have that freemium version more enjoyable. It was just really comprehensive.
Yeah. And I was going to, as I listened to your speaking, I was going to throw one in for myself, and that was that because I mentioned GIFs, and that was the Discover in the US had an ad for a new debit card, and they used a Facebook ad where they used one of these very popular GIFs of an owl switching it, turning its head around, and anyway, it resonated with me. But all of these, what's interesting, all of these examples that we've said, that you've said, are, I guess, it's not that they're not native ads, but they're sort of integrated into consumers' entertainment. Is that where help me kind of articulate it?
They're integrated into the entertainment, but I think they're also poking a little bit of fun at themselves. They're saying, hey, here we are. This is an ad, and we know you have to watch something. So we're going to poke fun at ourselves a little bit as advertisers and get involved in the discourse, or, make a joke about pausing and going to the bathroom, whatever the case may be.
Yes. So tip for advertisers, make fun of yourselves.
Be funny.
Be funny. Be funny. All right. Well, brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on iTunes or any other platform you get your podcasts from. We've just launched recently, so spread the word, and we'll catch you next week for a new episode of Little Conversation. Thank you very much, Buddy. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Rebecca. If you want to know more about Mintel, who we are and what we do, head over to mintel.com and follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and check out our blog for even more insights from our analysts. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.